Okay, now let's talk about the types of equity securities that you can actually issue in a financing. And let's talk about common stock first. There are a lot of different types of equity securities, common stock being the, pardon the pun, most common. Then there's also preferred stock, there's warrants, there's options. Each of these equity categories has a different set of rights and preferences and rates of return in exchange for the capital that's contributed. In the case of common stock, one share of common stock is equal to a fractional ownership of the company in which you hold that share. So let's say you have 10,000 shares outstanding and you own 1,000 shares. That means you own 10% of the company. Common stock is generally issued to the founders of the company when they first set the company up. You probably issue some to employees, either as incentive for them to join the company and join the management team. And you also may offer them to consultants in exchange for maybe either no price or low price consulting help. The attributes of a common stock are that, number one, it's generally the easiest and most simple form of equity to issue. All the shareholders who own common stock all have exactly the same rights and privileges. And if you eventually, and hopefully you will eventually, raise more money, and that would likely be under a preferred stock type of equity, the common stock's value has diminished because the preferred stock has preferences over and above what the common shareholders get. Therefore, it's considered to be the most junior of all securities when it comes to liquidation. And common stock is not convertible into other securities like some other companies, some other securities are. So some of the nice attributes about common stock is each common shareholder gets one vote for each share that he or she holds on certain corporate matters, and including voting on the board of directors, which can be a very good attribute for the common shareholders to have. Generally speaking, most boards, at least when they become more developed and a little more sophisticated, they will actually have a director that represents the interest of the common shareholders. You can receive dividends on common stock, but in order to do that, the dividends have to be actually declared by the board of directors. And generally speaking, in very early companies, common shareholders did not get paid dividends. Another thing about dividends is if you pay common shareholders dividends and you have a preferred stock outstanding, the preferred stockholders get dividends paid to them before common shareholders do. The initial amount of common stock is generally set at the incorporation of the company, but as you progress through your company's life and you issue additional securities and you raise more money, you may have to make an amendment to your charter to have more shares issued to accommodate the new investment. And my view is you should have enough shares authorized initially when you first set up your company to allow the founders to have some stock, and also to give awards to people like restricted stock agreements or stock options to incentivize people to come work for your company. And one of the important things about key employees who have common stock is that you should establish vesting schedules that say, okay, the stock has been, in most cases, either given to them or sold to them at very low pricing. And oftentimes, particularly when you have a sophisticated investor come in, they'll want to put in vesting schedules that say, okay, the common stock is with you, but you have to stay with the company over the next 4 years in order for you to take the common stock away with you when you leave. Generally speaking, vesting schedules are 4 years, with the first year being like a 25% cliff, meaning you have to stay there for 1 year, and then you have 25% of the stock vested. And then generally speaking, it switches over to a month-to-month vesting at that point. So common stock has something called a par value attached to it. It's a little bit archaic concept, but it's initially, or in the early days of company formation, the par value represented the price below which a share could not be sold. Some companies actually have no par stock issued. It's becoming less and less common now. So most companies will have a par value attached to the common stock, and it essentially means, in today's environment, the value at which shares are bought by the founders. Not always, but sometimes. There are implications to the par value in a lot of states of incorporation or countries of incorporation. There could be tax issues around the common stock par value. In Delaware, for example, which is a very popular state of incorporation in the U.S., the franchise tax in Delaware is determined based upon the par value of the common stock. So generally speaking, the price, the par value of the stock should be set very low. In this example, we're talking about 1/1000th of a cent. And the reason you want to set it so low is because there is, in fact, a possibility that in the event that a company were to be unsuccessful and eventually have to discontinue their operations, there are some ways for legal authorities to suggest that common shareholders who have not paid at least the par value for the common stock are liable up to the value of the par value. So if you set it extremely low, your liability will be limited in that case. So to summarize what we're talking about here, common stock is a simple form of equity. It is at the very low end of the preference ladder. You're the last person to receive money out of the company in the liquidation, but you have rights attached to your common stock, like the ability to vote on the board of directors. You can also vote on equity, new equity issues, and also things like strategic plans and that kind of thing, possibly. Another thing that they do have is that there is a preemptive right in many states of a jurisdiction and countries of jurisdiction, which says a common shareholder has the right to maintain their pro rata ownership as the company continues to raise new money and become diluted. So not all common shareholders take advantage of that because that requires them to put more money into a deal. But the fact is they do have that right. They're called pro rata rights, maintaining your percentage ownership through the history of the company. So that's common stock. The next time we'll be talking, I think, about preferred stock, but that's the details of what common stock's all about. Good luck when you set your company up, and hopefully this will be helpful to you.